Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Yeti, the DNA evidence behind the world's most famous monster. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. For centuries, people living in the Himalayas have reported encounters with a large, bipedal creature covered in hair that leaves enormous footprints in the snow. Western explorers brought back blurry photographs, scalps, and hair samples. In 2017, a geneticist at the University of Buffalo conducted the most comprehensive DNA analysis of Yeti samples ever attempted, and the results were surprising. Not surprising because they confirmed an unknown creature. Surprising because of how completely and precisely they explained every sample tested, and because of what that explanation reveals about the conditions under which people see things in high-altitude mountain environments. Every hair, bone fragment, and tissue sample purported to come from a Yeti that was submitted to scientific analysis matched a known animal. But the story of how those misidentifications happen, what bears look like at altitude in darkness, and why the legend persists so powerfully across so many independent cultures is more interesting than either a confirmation or a dismissal. What is the Yeti, actually? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The 20th and 21st centuries were supposed to be the age of answers. Science had decoded DNA, split the atom, put humans on the moon, and mapped the genome. By the logic of accelerating discovery, every mystery should be converging toward explanation. And yet the ledger of genuinely unexplained phenomena, events witnessed by credible observers, investigated by serious researchers, and still lacking a satisfying account, has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown. Part of this is a failure of classification. Phenomena that do not fit established categories tend to be dismissed rather than investigated, filed under anecdotal or mass hysteria, and removed from serious consideration. This is not always wrong. Genuine hoaxes and misperceptions account for a large portion of anomalous reports. But the dismissal is sometimes premature, and the cost is real. Cases that might have yielded genuine insight are closed before they are fully examined. Witnesses are discredited. Evidence is lost. The question is never properly asked. The cases that endure, that survive rigorous scrutiny, and still refuse to yield to conventional explanation, are a small but significant set. They share certain characteristics: multiple independent witnesses, physical evidence consistent with witness testimony, and a complete absence of any plausible prosaic explanation that accounts for all the data. These are not ghost stories. They are open problems in empirical science, waiting for someone with the right tools and the intellectual courage to take them seriously. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Yeti, the DNA evidence behind the world's most famous monster, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The word Yeti derives from the Tibetan Yeti, meaning roughly, that thing there. The creature was first brought to sustained Western attention by British naturalist B. H. Hodgson in 1832, who described an encounter reported by his native guides in Nepal. By the mid-20th century, Yeti reports had become a significant element of Himalayan expedition culture, with multiple British and American climbing expeditions reporting footprints, sounds, or visual encounters. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered Eric Shipton's 1951 photographs of large footprints in the snow on the slopes of the Menlung Glacier became the most widely reproduced Yeti evidence of the era. The prints are clear, large, and show a bipedal track pattern. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reported seeing similar large footprints during their 1953 Everest expedition. Shipton's photographs remain a reference point in Yeti discussions despite subsequent natural explanations for their formation. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine multiple Himalayan monasteries hold objects described as Yeti scalps, hand bones, and other physical relics. These objects are treated as sacred artifacts and displayed during festivals. Several have been subjected to scientific analysis over the years, always producing identifications as known animals. The monastery collections at Kumjung and Pangbach in Nepal are the most well-known. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Brian Sykes of Oxford University conducted DNA analysis of 37 purported Yeti samples in 2013, publishing results in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Two of his samples, hair specimens from Ladakh and Bhutan, matched a genetic sequence associated with an ancient polar bear-brown bear hybrid lineage. Sykes proposed these might represent a previously unknown bear species or hybrid population living in the Himalayas. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Charlotte Lindqvist of the University at Buffalo conducted a more comprehensive DNA analysis of 24 samples from 9 museum and private collections in 2017, also published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Her analysis included the same sample types examined by Sykes, plus additional material. All 24 samples were identified as coming from known animals: Himalayan brown bear, Asian black bear, Tibetan brown bear, and in one case, a dog. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Reinhold Messner, one of the greatest mountaineers in history and a person with extensive first-hand experience of Himalayan conditions, argued in his 1998 book My Quest for the Yeti that the creature is a real but known animal, specifically the Himalayan brown bear, known locally as the chemo, which can travel bipedally for short distances and is rarely seen clearly at high altitude in poor light. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Yeti, the DNA evidence behind the world's most famous monster. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Lindqvist et al.'s 2017 analysis concluded that all tested samples come from known animal species, with no evidence for an unknown large primate or hominin in the Himalayas. This is now the dominant scientific position. Himalayan bears, particularly the brown bear variants living at high altitude, are the most likely source of Yeti sightings, with footprints in snow enlarging and distorting as they melt, creating the impression of large bipedal tracks. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Sykes' 2013 finding of a polar bear brown bear hybrid genetic signature in 2 samples suggested the possibility of an unknown bear population or hybrid species in the Himalayas, not yet catalogued by science. This interpretation was not confirmed by Lindqvist's 2017 analysis and is not currently supported by the weight of available genetic evidence, though Sykes maintains his original interpretation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Messner's bear misidentification hypothesis proposes that nighttime or poor visibility encounters with Himalayan brown bears account for most Yeti sightings, with cultural tradition and expectation shaping subsequent interpretation of ambiguous encounters. This explanation is consistent with all available physical evidence and with the known behavior and distribution of Himalayan bear species. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Yeti, the DNA evidence behind the world's most famous monster, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence, as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes Lindqvist et al.'s 2017 paper in the Proceedings of the Royal Society analyzed 24 samples from purported Yeti relics held in museums and private collections across Asia and Europe. Every single sample matched the DNA of a known animal species. The analysis used modern next-generation sequencing techniques capable of identifying degraded ancient DNA and was conducted blind to the sample's purported origins. No unknown species or hominin DNA was detected in any sample. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented footprints in snow are notoriously unreliable physical evidence. As snow melts and refreezes, animal tracks expand, lose definition, and can merge with adjacent impressions, creating prints far larger than the original animal's foot. Bare footprints in particular, which have a distinctive five-toe pattern, can produce large, roughly oval impressions in melting snow that resemble enlarged human footprints. Shipton's 1951 photographs are consistent with this natural distortion process. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed environmental DNA technology, which can detect the presence of large mammals from water, soil, and air samples without requiring direct tissue collection, now exists and has been applied in the Himalayas in surveys for rare wildlife. No Yeti or unknown large primate eDNA has been detected in any Himalayan environmental sample. This absence of signal from a technology that would detect a large mammal without any direct encounter represents perhaps the most comprehensive null result in Yeti research to date. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Yeti, the DNA evidence behind the world's most famous monster. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Lindqvist's 2017 study is the most scientifically comprehensive analysis of Yeti physical evidence ever conducted, and its results, all samples from known animals, are accepted by the relevant scientific community. Sykes' polar bear hybrid finding from 2013 was not confirmed by subsequent analysis. The Yeti legend remains deeply embedded in Sherpa, Tibetan, and Nepali culture, and continues to attract both popular and scholarly attention. Environmental DNA surveys in the Himalayas have found no trace of an unknown large mammal. The scientific consensus is that Yeti sightings reflect bear encounters, cultural tradition, and the psychologically powerful effect of high-altitude isolation on perception. Furthermore, The tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Yeti, the DNA evidence behind the world's most famous monster, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Yeti ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.